Welcome folks, to my channel, Dr. Wanderlust. Today we are on a walking tour to one of the historic landmark of the city of Durban, the Bluff Whaling Station, one and only land-based whaling station that existed. Let's explore. Many of the younger people living in Durban won't know that it was once a busy center of the whaling industry. Thousands of migrating whales were caught in the seas nearby and towed back here to be processed into a number of products which were highly prized by consumers, both local and overseas. Whaling in Durban stopped in 1975, but older residents won't have any problem remembering those days and, in particular, the very bad smells which wafted from the whaling stations on the seaward side of the bluff and made the lives of people living nearby a misery. The industry in Durban started in 1907 when the Norwegian consul in Durban, Jacob Eglan, went back to Norway and, with fellow Norwegian Johan Bride, raised money to start a whaling operation in Durban. The two men formed the South African Whaling Company in 1907 and brought 2 ships for catching whales to Durban from Sandefjord in Norway. They started hunting whales in 1908, and managed to catch and kill 106 of the huge animals that year. This small hike starts from Finnemore Lookout Point in Bluff, as there are no specific landmarks to find the spot. Try to reach Lookout Point Bluff, 32 to 10 Finnemore PL, Ocean View. Bluff is already said, this point doesn't have parking facility or any other ablutions. It is a narrow road and try to park sensibly before starting your hike. The Finnemore Point gives you a beautiful view of the bluff side of the Indian Ocean. From this point, find the reinforced plastic steps downhill. This will be 300 plus steps straight down into the woods. Stay hydrated and wear good clothing to absorb your sweat. Once you reach down, you will be seeing a few remains of the railway track and some station buildings. This place is rich in fauna and flora. Take care while hiking down the stairs. Nature along with the sounds of birds and insects make the hiking interesting, isn't it? Our team, hiking down the stairs, felt it was easy to moderate, so anyone can do this, but take your own time. The Bluff Beach sand would be hot as it is in the east facing. If you start your day hike in the morning, be prepared to have hot sun while you progress. You will be walking a mile towards the old whaling station in the bluff. After a mile, you will start seeing some old remains.
What is that? Very interesting how our relationship with animals. This one's gone deep.
Oh.
I can feel the hole.
Our mate, Craig, found a crab, but it
Yeah.
went deep, so went in search, but he only got this small crustaceans.
I don't normally go this deep. But they can get quite big, these things, eh? Crazy things, eh?
Up and then they closed it. Oh, got a big thing inside.
How long do you think that has left to stand?
Especially when you look here and you look at it.
100 years old.
More than.
Smell from the first whaling station was very bad, and there were so many complaints from residents that, after the first whaling season, it was decided to move the station to the seaward side of the bluff where there were fewer people to complain. Whales were still brought into the harbor and pulled up the slipway, but now they were loaded onto a specially built train, which was unique in the world, and taken to the whaling station. In 1909, 155 whales were brought into Durban, but after that, Jacob Eglon ended his partnership with Johan Bride and started the Union Whaling and Fishing Company with his cousin Abraham Larsen. The whaling trade must have been very profitable because there were 13 whaling companies registered in Natal by 1912, but only 6 ever operated. Most of the whaling companies failed as a result of World War I, but the premier whaling company started again in 1919, and in 1922, Egeland and Larsen started the Union Whaling Company. The two companies operated 9 catchers. Each shared the slipway in the harbor, and had whaling stations near each other on the other side of the bluff. It was about 1.5 miles by rail from the slipway to the Union Whaling Station and another mile to the one belonging to the Premier Whaling Company. The specially designed train had 2 flatbed carriages which could carry 1 large whale, or 2 smaller ones, and it would transport whales to each of the whaling stations in turn. In 1931, Lever Brothers, owner of the Premier Whaling Company, sold out to the Union Whaling Company, which operated both whaling stations until 1953, when the old Union Station was closed. The company used the Premier Station until whaling came to end in Durban 1975. Whaling in Durban was mainly shore-based, but the Union Whaling Company did undertake pelagic whaling operations, which involves catching whales and processing them aboard a factory ship at sea. The catchers would catch and kill whales and tow them back to the factory ship where they would be processed and the byproducts stored until the fleet got back to dry land. In 1937, the company acquired a factory ship, named the Uniwalico, which would travel to the Antarctic with a number of catchers to hunt during the summer season. In the Antarctic off-season, she and the catchers would operate in the waters around Madagascar, hunting humpback whales. The Uniwalico was requisitioned by the Navy at the outbreak of World War II and was later sunk by a torpedo. The war reduced the level of whaling in Durban, with many of the newer catchers being used by the South African Navy as minesweepers while hostilities lasted. There is a naval shooting range close to the station. So, here in all the buildings, you can find the bullet shot marks.
That's what I looked at.
Right.
This place, once it was fully functional, should be busy place hunting and processing whales and its byproducts. But now it looks haunted and scary.
You, what's it say?
Yo, what's that?
Warning, the next portion of the video will be disturbing for some viewers. Whaling season in Durban lasted from March to September because whales would migrate northward past Durban at the start of the Antarctic winter and pass by, on their way south again. During these months, the catchers could reap a rich harvest of whales without having to sail much more than 150 miles from Durban. The catchers would kill whales by shooting them with 165-pound metal harpoons loaded with explosive. They would then pump the dead whales full of compressed air so that they would float, and, once the vessel had finished hunting, it would tow the whales it had killed back to Durban. Whales would be brought right into the bay and pulled up out of the water on a slipway on the bay side of the bluff. They were then taken into the whaling station nearby, where they went through a process called flensing, which is just another way of saying that they were cut up and their blubber, meat and bone separated. The blubber was rendered down into oil, which was the most important product made from whales during the early years of whaling in Durban, and was used to make soap, margarine and cooking fat. Other products produced from sperm whales included sperm oil, which was used as a general-purpose lubricant for delicate machinery, spermaceti wax, used for candles and in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, bone and protein meal, used for animal feed, and meat extract, used as a flavoring base for soups. In later years, frozen whale meat gained in popularity, especially in the Japanese market. One of the rarest and most pricey byproducts of whaling is ambergris, which is actually an intestinal blockage found in a small percentage of sperm whales. Ambergris does not lose its smell for decades and provides a compound used as a fixative in the most expensive perfumes. The spot where the slipway and whaling station were built had been very popular with Durban residents who liked to go there to swim and have picnics, but the whale carcasses floating in the water attracted so many sharks that soon nobody dared swim there. The catchers based in Durban continued to hunt, and, although experience had made them very good at finding whales, the decision in 1954 to spot whales from the air and direct the catchers to them by radio proved to be very successful. The aircraft operating company provided the crews and aircraft, and the first flights were made from Stamford Hill Airport in Durban by pilot Ken Pinkerton and observer Abraham Larson in a twin-engine de Havilland DH-89A Dragon repeat aircraft. A news report in 1963 said that the flights had started as a 10-day experiment, but that they had proved so effective that aircraft had flown nearly 1 million miles on whale spotting missions since then. It was recorded that the aircraft had spotted 11,874 whales and that nearly half of these had been caught and killed by the catchers. The smells caused by the whaling stations were a problem from the early days of whaling in Durban, but complaints began to multiply after people began to settle on the bluff around the stations. In 1965, the Union Whaling Company spent 65,000 rands on foam scrubbing equipment to try and eliminate the smell from the meat drying plant. On April 23, 1974, the Daily News reported that there had been many complaints from nearby residents about the smell. Mr. Laserman, Joint Managing Director of Union Whaling, said that the warm and sultry weather had meant that there was little wind to blow the smell away. He said that the problem was that there were homes on the bluff almost on the level of the whaling station chimneys. The company had managed to reduce the smell by 95%, but, he said, he doubted whether it would ever be completely eliminated. Efforts to establish the museum came to nothing, and the 2 catchers were sold and refitted in Durban. It was announced that the vessels were to be fish tenders. But, in fact, they were intended for the pirate whaling trade. The vessels were equipped with freezing plants and would apparently sail up to unsuspecting whales, catch them, haul them up on deck and cut them up. One of the ships was later sunk off the west coast of Africa when, according to Peter Frood, a whale partly attached to the catcher slipped overboard, making the vessel capsize. At least one of the other catchers, the F.H. Hughes, was deliberately sunk 8 kilometers off Durban in a naval exercise. The vessel had put in 25 years of service and was scuttled on December 19, 1975, joining the many other vessels which have shared the same fate near Durban.
No, he's peeving.
We completed our beautiful day hike and moving back to our residence with memories and interesting facts. This can be DIY hike with friends and family, but be there at sunrise to avoid the flaming sun. Thank you for your patience. I will catch you all in next interesting video. For updates, please subscribe my Dr. Wanderlust channel without fail. Also, like, comment and share your suggestions.